Hello and welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. I'm so excited today to speak to one of my personal heroes. She has saved my world many, many times. She's 2012 Ironman world champion Leanda, who also happens to be my triathlon coach, and she is extraordinary. Not only does she give the best coaching plans in the world, so I never get bored when I'm doing 4,000 meters in the pool or 3 hours on my trainer on my bike in my apartment. She is a phenomenal person, and she is also, in addition to being an Ironman world champion, a health and wellness expert who is running an amazing clinic in Tucson, Arizona, that is helping athletes and all sorts of other people regenerate and heal and make vast improvements in their fitness and physicality. Leanda, welcome to Kennedy Saves the World.
Thanks. How fun. So it's nice to be on your show.
It's nice to talk to you. And you went into coaching after you stopped competing professionally as a triathlete. What was that adjustment like?
Well, I actually started coaching a few years before I retired from professional racing. I'd already been competing in the sport of triathlon for 15 years. So when I did start coaching, so I felt it was time to start spreading the word and helping others and establishing myself as a coach. So that day when I did retire, I would have my coaching business up and running, and I had kind of like a exit strategy, because at that point if I didn't have something to fall back on, I wouldn't have had had much of a career post athlete, if you like.
But it's really interesting because not everyone who is a great athlete makes a great coach. Some people do. Some people make a wonderful transition into it, and I can testify. I was so nervous. Oh, by the way, it is happy hour, so let us raise our cocktails to triathloning. There she is. Hers is a water bottle. Mine is just, I'm not drinking. I've got a race in a little over a week in Italy. It's a Half-Ironman. And this is an electrolyte solution that is Skittles flavored, and it tastes odd, but I'm okay with it because don't we all need hydration? But I was so intimidated to start working with you because I was like, I'm so slow. Like I'm a very mid-level age grouper. And I was worried that you were going to see my stats and be like, oh, this is disgusting. I can't work with you. But you have helped me make incremental improvements. But I have to say, one of the most important things I appreciate about your coaching is the mental aspect, because I'm one of those people where it doesn't matter how trained I am, I can really trip myself up on race day. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because I know there are a lot of people who go out there and they compete, whether it's triathlon or, maybe they're doing their first 5K or their first marathon, but it's the nerves leading up to a race that can almost be paralyzing. So what do you tell some of your clients like me and I've been doing triathlons since 1995, literally for 29 years, and I still get nervous. So what advice do you give to people who get to the start and are overcome by butterflies?
Well, I mean, I'm just going to go rewind a bit. First of all, with my coaching, I never ever look at an athlete and think they don't have the ability to improve or they are a different level than everyone else. I think, we all have our own limitations physiologically and also with our lifestyle. So I like to be able to mold my training and coaching around everyone. So I never thought that about you. Just
I know, it was great. My fears were unfounded, and I was very happy to learn that. And it put me at ease.
I love seeing how you've improved as an athlete, and I think when you talk about nerves leading into a race, everyone gets them, and I think you have to turn it from a negative into a positive. And I think they never went away for me. 18 years of professional racing, I was still nervous at the day of my last race. I just think what you need to kind of shift that mindset towards is racing is actually the day you get to celebrate all the training. And so when you don't, no one sees you training, no one sees all the hard 3-hour trainer rides in your apartment or the 4,000 yard swim that you do on a daily basis. So no one gets to see that. So what I feel like people do get to see is the results, the day you race. So I feel like that's the time you can showcase. I call it like you're getting on the dance floor and you're showing everyone your moves. I really think that the day you race is the day you get to kind of really celebrate all the hard work that no one gets to see.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's such a great way of looking at it, is, like a celebration, because you should be stoked. And it's one thing that kind of helped me. I was doing a race a couple of years ago, and we're all about to start the swim, and we're all at the starting line. I'm there with everyone in my age group, and the thing that kind of took my nerves away is realizing that every single person there is also nervous. Like every single person, they may be twice as fast as me out of the water, but their nerves are at the exact same level as mine. Now, there is an amazing story about you. The night before you won the world championship, not the night, but the day before, you were also nervous. And what did you drink in order to bring yourself a little bit of comfort?
I wouldn't encourage that, because scientifically drinking half a bottle of wine does not do favors for your HRV, heart rate variability. But I mean, for me, I felt like it was the better of two evils. Yes, I was lining up probably, well, obviously in the best shape I'd ever been in. And I knew that. And I just felt I needed something just to like bring it down a notch so I could have a good night's sleep before the race. So, to your point, I did drink half a bottle of wine.
I think it's great.
I think a lot of people out there will think it's great. But again, I would say like I did drink wine, not on a regular basis, but before training, at least once or twice a week. So I wouldn't say it was something that I was not familiar with. But if you're out there and you don't drink wine, I wouldn't suggest you should go drink half a bottle of wine before you do your next race.
No, and I abstain from alcohol for 2 weeks before I race, because it always makes me feel better. Like it always makes me feel clear. And even if it doesn't make any difference emotionally, like it makes me feel like at least I've done something. So I know, like, I'm at the point where I'm going to start to taper. But 2 weeks out before a race, what can anyone do? Like, is there a supplement that people can do? Should they sit in a hyperbaric chamber like 2 weeks out? What realistically can you do that can make even a slight difference without hurting you?
The 2 weeks leading into a race is really not so much what you can do, but more like what you shouldn't be doing. And that comes down to like the things like, but 2 weeks before a race, you've done all the training you can do. At this point, you're not going to get any fitter. So it's not a time where you kind of start cramming in training, thinking that it's going to make a difference to race day, because it doesn't. All it does is just make you more tired for race day. And you've got to make sure, like, especially if in your case, you're traveling to Italy for a race. That's a long haul flight. You want to make sure your body has built up its immune system so you don't end up getting sick en route to the race. I think that happens to a lot of people. They're so burnt out by the time they get to the race, most like physically, mentally, that they end up getting sick and they're on the start line with a cold or, something. So that's the one thing. Also, like you mentioned some of the recovery techniques. Yes, I would say they're an important part of everybody's day-to-day training program. Leading into a race, you kind of maybe want to go a little bit heavier on the recovery and spend a little bit more time like just fine-tuning the body, just like you would a car. If you're going on a big long road trip, make sure that the tires are pumped up, the gas is full, the oil's topped up, like all these little things. So it's the same with the body. You want to just keep topping the body up with all the good stuff. And so that's like nutrition, paying attention to nutrition. In your case, you cut out the alcohol. Other people will start being, paying a little bit more attention to maybe cutting out some of the sugars and fatty foods that may contribute to some lethargic effects.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you could totally get a food hangover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, like, when we talk about tapering and things like that, people are like, oh, I got a carbo load, I've got to do all this. To some extent, I wouldn't say you need to carbo load as much if you have a pretty good diet to begin with, because what's happening when you're tapering is you're reducing the volume and intensity anyway. So you're not burning through those glycogen stores. So you don't want to keep like topping up, or then you're just going to go into like what you said, like this food hangover where you're taking in all these carbs and your body's like, well, what do I do with them? Oh, I'm just going to start shifting them and turning them to fat. And so then you're like going to, so you've got to kind of keep a balance.
That leads me to another question. So I am always heaviest and most bloated right before I race. Why is that? And it's like, this is after 12 hours of training and a good diet and sleeping well, but why? And I've read about this. Like, it's a phenomenon, and a lot of marathon runners have it. Like, they get the bulkiest right before they race. What is it, and what can you do about it?
Well, a lot of that is actually fluid retention. I wouldn't say that's like fat. You're not putting on weight. You're probably retaining fluid.
It's definitely fluid. Like it's definitely like that's the squishy middle.
When you're training, you're expelling electrolytes. You're utilizing all the like you're sweating a lot and things like that. When you reduce your training, you're not. And so what's happening? Your body's like kind of holding on to some of that fluid, which is actually good. Don't think of that always as a bad thing. It's actually good to be hydrated going into a race. And so that's actually a good thing, that you might be a little bit bloated or a little bit, holding on to a little bit of fluid going into a race. It's not going to impact you exceptionally differently. It's actually probably going to help you if that race might be, for example, on a hot day.
Nice. Well, I think I'm probably going to win then, because I'm definitely winning the bloating contest. So let's talk about sodium bicarbonate, because there are always things that kind of show up after big events where someone either breaks a record. So there were a lot of records that fell during the Olympics, and we saw reporting that some of the athletes were using a sodium bicarbonate supplement. And I know Maurten, Maurten, they sponsor a lot of Ironman events, and you'll see like Maurten gels and stuff on the course. And I like Maurten gels because I have a very sensitive stomach, and they seem to assimilate without giving me the scoots during a race, which is absolutely the opposite of what you want. But is sodium bicarbonate something that civilian athletes like me, mid-level runners and triathletes, is it something that we should be incorporating into our training as well? Like, will I cut a half hour off of my Half-Ironman time by using a sodium bicarbonate?
So yes, no, okay, I'm going to kind of break that down a little bit. Sodium bicarbonate, also known as baking soda, has found its way into sports nutrition, and has been used for many years, but nutrition scientists have found that it does help to reduce the lactic acid that builds up in your body from high intensity exercise. And so, as you mentioned, like the Olympics and things like that's all super high intensity exercise. Like these races are, these guys are going at their best effort to win gold medals. And so, yes, that can help buffer that lactic acid. And the lactic acid is a byproduct of muscle activity that is, it's essentially like it needs oxygen to be able to break it down. So bicarb soda helps do that. From an endurance perspective, it can't do any harm. There's not a ton of science that says it's going to make a huge difference for anyone operating in like the zone 2, which is, around 2 to 3 millimole per liter of lactic acid. But it's again, there's going to be points when you're racing where you might go into zones which do recruit more muscle, do elevate the heart rate, and hence create more lactic acid. So there is going to be some benefit. Can I say it's going to give you a 30-minute advantage in your race? I don't know. I would say there's a lot of things that could make a huge difference negatively or positively towards your end time in a competition. But put it this way, bicarb of soda is not going to do much harm. But again, it's always something that I would suggest, and we've discussed this also in your case. You want to make sure you've practiced using this in training. It's not something you want to go and digest on race morning and then find out that it's something your gut has issues with.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever used either a new piece of equipment or taken a new supplement during a race that had a bad result?
No, actually, okay. Yes and no. The reason I say nothing planned, I have taken Red Bull at the end of an Ironman because it's out there, it's on the course, and at that point I'm like, it's going to help. It can't do any harm. When you're mentally and physically at the end of your line, it's those sorts of things are just going to help. And it did. But it wasn't a plan for me to go and have Red Bull during the marathon of an Ironman.
No, but I remember I raced with a husband and wife, and the night before the Malibu Triathlon, he was putting laces in his new shoes, and I'm like, "You've never run in those?" I was like, "You're not supposed to do that." And he was like, "It's fine. These are the shoes I wear all the time." But I don't know if he got blisters. I just assumed that his feet were like hamburger after that because you need to break things in. So what about shoes? What about, and this goes for runners too. I know that the Nike carbon plate shoes are all over racing. I tried a pair and they made my plantar fasciitis really annoyed. Should people be racing in carbon plated shoes?
So these carbon shoes are designed for a certain speed of running, which the speed puts your foot in a position that when you land, that helps the carbon fiber flex and bounce your foot off the ground. If you're not running at these fast speeds, which is, that's like the majority of us, we're not going to get the benefit of these very expensive shoes that we've all paid $200-$300 for. But we're also going to end up with, like you said, some issues that could cause injury. So you need to find a shoe that's designed for your foot shape, and that means your arch, the width of your foot, but also something that's more catered towards your speed of running. And that's why I think a lot of people, I think the shoes definitely make a difference, but I've only really noticed that over short distances where I'm running at pace. Otherwise, like a long, steady, aerobic run, which again, you're doing a half Ironman, you shouldn't be running at like 400 meter to 1,000 meter speed. You're going to be running an endurance half marathon at your pace. So that shoe would unlikely benefit anyone like you. It might help somebody running at like doing a sprint or an Olympic distance who, has some speed behind them. But for the majority of us, I think it just lends itself to more injuries than it does help.
Okay, now back to goofy shoes. Remember the toe shoes, the Vibram toe shoes that people were running for a while? Were people racing in those? Because I remember going to my podiatrist when I had broken my foot, and he's like, "You have no idea how many people I see who've gotten injuries from those shoes." And he said, "If you're ever tempted to buy them, please save your money. And save your money seeing me, because this is where you will end up if you wear those shoes."
Yeah, it's these shoe companies, I wouldn't say the mainstream ones, but there's some companies who try and reinvent the wheel and try to sell us on an idea. And I think that Vibram shoe was kind of, is that right? The Vibram was a shoe that kind of came out of that Born to Run book.
Yes.
Where, and so everyone read the book. Everyone's going to buy these shoes.
These people ran barefoot. Like, I'm hurting my feet by wearing shoes. And then there were Newtons, which forced everyone to run on their toes. And then there were all sorts of foot problems from those. And now people are basically running on Tempur-Pedic mattresses, which I like that trend. I love the Hoka trend. And, and I'm glad that every shoe company is making those giant, weird-looking shoes. I mean, they do look pretty goofy, but they're so much better for people like me who are dragging a big ass around.
Yeah, I was a big fan when I was racing. Early on, I was in a situation where I was training where I had no soft surfaces to run on. So I kind of just started wearing those shoes just because it saved my legs with the impact. And so I became a big fan of the Hokas. And yeah, to your point, there are a lot of brands now making shoes that give you that extra cushion. And I mean, I would say the majority of runners live in dense metropolitan areas like New York, LA, Chicago, these places where you don't have a lot of opportunity to run off-road.
Yeah.
So I feel like those sort of shoes are definitely something that most people probably would benefit from wearing.
Yeah. And I'm a sucker. I'll keep following the trends, but not without consulting you. I can't tell you what having a coach has done for me, and not only my training, but not overtraining and not putting the emphasis on the wrong things, because I did that for a long time and got injured. And, this is my first half Ironman since I had my torn labrum repaired in my hip, and I'm excited to do it, but it's taken time. It's taken working with you, and it has been invaluable. So we will talk again at some point after the race and, figure out the best plan for the hardest time of year for most people, which is the fall and winter, because that's when people fall off the wagon. So hopefully you'll come back so we can, talk to people about all the ways you can get creative so you don't turn into a great big fat person.
Winter motivation. I love
Exactly right. All right. What's one piece of advice you can give me going into the race to help me overcome my mental blocks?
Well, I think I've said this to you in the past. It's just like one, keep moving forward. One step in front of the other gets you to the finish line. If you stop, you don't get there.
Amen. Leanda Cave, thank you so much. You're incredible, and I'll talk to you very, very soon.
Thank you.
Cheers to you and your expertise. This has been Happy Hour. It's Kennedy Saves the World, along with Leanda Cave. I'm Kennedy. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.
Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.